Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Tracy Clairmont joining us here once again. We are excited to have her back as a hypnotherapist, a coach,
Thank
so
you.
much more. She kind of does a lot as a mom and just an amazing person. We've had some great conversations, a little bit of a hiatus. It's great to see you again. Please
Thank
introduce
you.
yourself to everyone today before we start.
Of course, yes, I'm Tracy Clairmont. I'm a certified hypnotherapist and life coach. I am located in Western Montana. I do hypnotherapy and life coaching over Zoom or, of course, in person as well if somebody's able to make it to my office here in Montana. And I can be reached via email at hypnowithtracy@yahoo.com. That's hypnowithtracy@yahoo.com. And Jill, I'm excited to finally announce that I have a website up and going. And
Congratulations. What is it?
I'm so excited. It is tracyclairmonthypnotherapy.com. And that's another way that people can kind of check me out and reach me for appointments.
One more time. What is it?
tracyclairmonthypnotherapy.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Pleasure to have
Yeah.
you here. For listeners today, may not know a little bit about your background, just share a little bit. Where are you from? And give us a little background. Then we're going to kind of dive into hypnotherapy today, I think, correct?
Yes. So I am a clinical mental health therapist or licensed clinical social worker. I do have a practice doing mental health therapy, and I've done mental health therapy for the past 30 plus years. Several years ago, I started looking into other ways of working with people, and I was very much drawn to hypnotherapy. One of the things that I love about hypnotherapy is that it is work in the subconscious mind. So I am always amazed at the results that come from actually going into the subconscious mind and doing healing versus working with our conscious mind. You know, there's often many barriers in our conscious mind that we're not even aware of, and we can want so badly change within ourselves, within our thinking, within our lives. And we're just not able to understand or have the awareness around what it is that is causing us to just kind of be stuck. And hypnotherapy is a way of going into the subconscious mind and looking at the origins of our issues. So I am a true believer in hypnotherapy. I am amazed by the results all the time. I act as a guide for a person to go into a deep state of relaxation. And in hypnotherapy, you know, it allows for our nervous system to be in a sleep state so that we can be completely relaxed and access the subconscious part of our minds and really go in there as investigators and look to see where the origins of our issues lie. In our subconscious mind, we have all our memories and all the emotions attached with those memories. And those are really those memories, past experiences, they're really what's driving the bus in our life today. It colors our perception. It really dictates how we move through the world when we make those connections between our past experiences and our issues today. And then we do, you know, when we have that understanding, it's so powerful because then we can work on the healing and we can put uh, suggestions into our minds that serve us better, the opposite of what we're what the issue is. So hypnotherapy is just an amazing process. I'm continually impressed by the results and even surprised myself by the results. I've had many hypnotherapy sessions to do my own work, so I've felt those results firsthand, and I just love doing it. It's such a beautiful process, a natural process.
And nothing to be scared of, right? Some people may be like, well, they're nervous. What could happen to me while I'm not thinking? Can you control me? Can you, right? You get that sometimes, I'm sure.
Oh, for sure, yes. And that's why when I had my website developed, I included frequently asked questions, and it really addresses the primary concerns that people come to hypnotherapy with. but it's very often, I've had very anxious people come to me, very nervous about even being with me over Zoom in my presence about what was going to take place, what was going to happen. And I always tell them it's a completely natural process. Their only job in the whole process is to be willing to listen to my guidance and allow themselves to relax. That's really their only job. And the process just takes care of itself. It just happens, it just flows. Sometimes people, in this process, we go back to memories, and sometimes people are really nervous, like, nothing's going to come up, I'm not going to see anything. And I always just say, well, if that happens, that's fine. Then we just take a little more time to relax and to go into a deeper state of hypnosis. And it comes, it'll come. And it always does come. And then other people are worried about what might come, right? Like they don't want to re-experience horribly traumatic experiences in their lifetime. And I always remind them that, with calm confidence, that anything that comes up, we will be looking at as an observer. If there's overwhelming emotion, then we'll step back and I'll remind you that you're observing. It's not happening again. We are looking for answers, we're investigating, we're looking to make connections. So I handle people with care as well, because I do understand that this can seem like a scary process, and nobody wants to be out of control of their mind, right? There's never a time where I am in control of somebody's mind. My clients are always in full control of their minds, and they remember the experience. They are interacting with me during the experience, and there's nothing I could ask somebody to do that they don't want to do, because I, in fact, do not have control over anybody's mind. Yeah, and I'm an ethical practitioner, and there's many hypnotherapists out there who are ethical who would never do that anyway. I think people kind of think about stage hypnosis when they get anxious about being out of control of their mind. And stage hypnosis is for entertainment purposes, and what I do is for healing purposes. Very different, very different. But I will say, even those people in stage hypnosis who go up on that stage and become hypnotized and do all sorts of crazy things, I will say that they are willing to do that. That hypnotist is not in control of their brain. He's asking them to do things that they are in fact willing to do. Mm-hmm. So even those people won't do something that they're not willing to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, let's talk more about the benefits. What are some type of things that could be helped with hypnotherapy?
Hypnotherapy, in my opinion, can help with virtually any kind of issue that somebody wants to work on. I spend about an hour session of time with people and a consultation prior to doing hypnotherapy, because sometimes people they have a sense that they really want something to be different in their life, but they have trouble like pinpointing what exactly the issue is. So that consultation period is time to work with people on what they really want most to feel different in their life. I've had a few people recently who it took quite a bit of sorting out to figure out what the real issue is, and they came to the conclusion, a couple different clients recently came to the conclusion that they really wanted to experience joy in their life, and they weren't. Even though from outward appearances, they so-called should be experiencing joy, like their life was going fairly well, they still had something inside of them that was a barrier to that, and they weren't able to just relax, live in the moment, experience joyful things. So that was something that kind of had to be teased out. Joy is so important to our human lives, experiencing real joy. There's a lot of people who have a real difficult time relaxing and living in the moment, as opposed to living in the past or living in the present or the future, right? And really focusing on those joyful experiences that they have with their loved ones now. So I've been helping a lot with that, and since since we're in this time of post-pandemic, um, we in the mental health field have seen such a great increase in anxiety, people with anxiety. And I've been thinking about this. I heard a statistic the other day. I was listening to a news program, and they were saying that people during the pandemic coped with alcohol so much that today there's a 350% increase in the demand for liver transplants post-pandemic. I mean, that's a lot of alcohol consumption. Well, why are people consuming that much alcohol during the pandemic? To regulate themselves, to cope, right? With all of this depression, anxiety, all this feeling that came up with the pandemic. So I was thinking about during the pandemic, what kind of feelings we felt. So in those lockdown days, in those days where we went months without being able to go out of our homes and engage in our typical human ways. And I was thinking about, fear, absolutely, isolation, loneliness, disconnected, a sense of like endless suffering, almost like when is this going to end, right? We didn't know. And it felt like we were trapped and it was just going to go on forever. And those are really feelings related to helplessness. And then I was looking at one of my books. I'm sure you've heard of it, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. He's a psychiatrist. Have you ever heard of that book?
Yes, I have. I never read it though, but I've heard of it.
Well, it's an amazing.
Have you mentioned it before? I feel like we've talked about it. No?
I don't know. I have talked a lot about how our bodies, when we hold an emotion, it makes our bodies sick. And that's basically, Dr. van der Kolk is an expert on trauma, and his book takes you through his process of understanding trauma through his years of practice. But I pulled some statistics just quickly from that book. And in his book, he says that 1 in 5 Americans have been sexually molested. 1 in 4 Americans grew up with alcoholics. 1 in 3 couples have engaged in physical violence. 1 in 3 couples have engaged in physical violence. Like, what does that say to the experience of our children and the couples engaged in the violence? So trauma, trauma, trauma. And that's just a brief picture of our world. And then here comes the pandemic. A heavy layer on top of all of that trauma. And it stands to reason that today we would have such an increase in depression and such an increase in anxiety because the pandemic invoked those feelings that triggered those feelings that so many people had from trauma experiences before. When you think of being a child and being abused, how much more helpless and alone can you feel in an experience like that? So we have, people who have been injured, just inundated with fear related to the pandemic, and now we're post-pandemic. I did and like I said, like this book says, the body keeps the score. All of these, we were left alone to deal with all these overwhelming feelings, all of these triggered feelings. We couldn't go out, even like we were afraid to go see doctors or go to hospitals, right? Because that's where everybody with COVID was. We're not going to want to go there. So we were left to deal with all of this on our own. And I firmly believe that our bodies just took a horrible toll. It took a horrible toll on our bodies, holding in all this emotion and dealing with it on our own. So now we have all these illnesses that have been reactivated, newly activated as a result of the pandemic. So it's really just been such an ongoing awful experience for us. But I want to tell about a session that I had, a hypnotherapy session that I had a few months ago. And it was with somebody who had gastrointestinal problems. And she came to me saying that she had so much pain in her belly. She had bloating, just severe reactions to eating different foods. She was completely miserable. And at one point, prior to the pandemic, she had had her symptoms under control. They were there, but they were manageable, and she didn't have all this pain and discomfort. Now, after the pandemic, and she didn't make these connections right then. She said, "Now today, they're out of control. I'm in so much
Yeah.
pain. I'm so miserable." Now, she didn't really believe that there was anything in her past that we could make connections with that would really resolve this issue, but she was willing to give anything a try. She said, let's just try this. And I said, great, let's see what we can find out. Let's make some sense of this so that we can feel like you can manage it, heal it, and deal with it. So we did. So again, hypnosis is me guiding a person into a deep, relaxed, natural state. You're not asleep. You have your awareness, but your nervous system is asleep and you're completely relaxed. So we went into that state. She went easily into that state. And we started going back to scenes. Now, typically, when we go back to scenes, we're going back. We're kind of peeling away the layers. We're going back and back and back. And typically, we go into childhood memories. Well, she didn't do that. She went into memory during the pandemic, like the early stages of the pandemic when everybody was in lockdown. And this is somebody who lived alone. She was feeling the intense isolation. She was feeling the confusion. She was talking about, she was in a scene where, she hadn't had any person-to-person interaction with anybody for 3 or 4 months. And we talked, I asked her what the feelings were, and it was fear. She was scared, helpless, lonely. She was feeling sick in her stomach. So we went to the next scene, and it turned out to be another scene from the pandemic, to my surprise, because I thought we would be going back into childhood. Went back into a later scene during the pandemic, and now in this scene, she was very ill. She was feeling so ill with her gastrointestinal problems. And she was scared because she didn't know what would happen if she got COVID on top of these other illnesses that she had. Right? And now she was saying that COVID felt so big and dark and scary. And she was feeling like it was never going to end. She was feeling helpless, alone, like she was trapped. So we stayed with those feelings and we peeled back the layers going into another scene. And this time she went into her childhood. And in this scene, she was looking like down into a house that didn't have a roof. So she was observing, which was good. So she wasn't reliving. She was observing, and she saw herself in this house with people who were abusing her. And it was kind of like a little mouse trap, like a mouse maze, I mean. And she was seeing herself in a corner, and she had these feelings, scared, never ending, trapped, alone, pain, unsafe. Her whole body was hurting. So then when we saw that those were the same feelings that came as a result of the pandemic, then she started making connections between those past experiences and her issue today with the gastrointestinal issues. And she discovered that her body believed that she was in that same danger that she had been in her childhood. Like her body couldn't tell that they weren't in imminent danger. So her body was in survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, everything constricts, right? Everything, your blood vessels, your cells, all of those things constrict because it's trying to help you survive. And when those things constrict, then things go wrong if it's extended for long periods of time in your body. So she was making those connections between her issues today and her body believing that they were intensely unsafe and it was needing to constrict to survive, and making those connections between her issue today and her past experiences. So it was very interesting to see how the pandemic had triggered all of those unsafe feelings and actually caused the physical reaction in her body. So for her healing, she did a dialogue with her internal organs, with her gastrointestinal tract, And she talked to her internal organs and said, "We are safe. It's not happening again. You don't have to do that. I appreciate that you've done that to keep me alive, but you can relax now. You don't have to do that." And we did a little command cell therapy where she commanded her body to go back to its original blueprint, to function in its peak capacity. And then I did suggestions as well along those lines. And then also the suggestions about her being safe, being in a relaxed, calm body, her digestive system working according to its original blueprint. And I left her with a recording that she listened to for 21 days. And that is an example of how she was able to get her digestive system back on track and working in a relaxed, meaningful, healthy manner and relieved so much pain. But I just love that example of hypnotherapy because it is so descriptive and so telling of the post-pandemic effect on our mind and body. They're just so real and so big. And there's, of course, many ways to seek treatment for things. I love hypnotherapy because it goes to the root of the issue, and the body keeps the score. You'll see that he also goes to, in his learning and his experiments and his vast knowledge of the way the mind works, he also goes to a place where organizing those experiences and doing healing in the subconscious mind is the most effective means of treating mental health issues long term. And it's quite, like I said, I'm always amazed, and it's so much fun to do hypnotherapy because I never know what's going to come up. And oftentimes my clients don't know either, but they have the willingness and they have the strength to really come and look at things, and they trust the process, and I really appreciate that. Really appreciate that.
Oh, I love it. Well, we still got 3 minutes left. I don't want to cut you short. Someone does want to work with you, reach out. Could you explain the process of that? And obviously, you do offer an initial consultation, which I think is important for people. I think it's a nice thing to do. Not everybody does.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, the initial consultation is so very important because it's my opportunity first to meet you and also to relieve some of those kind of fears that you might have around hypnotherapy. A lot of people don't know a lot about the process of hypnotherapy. It's my opportunity to put your mind at ease and describe the process and how it all works. And then also, like I said, to tease out what really the issue is and what you really want to work on. And, it may be more than one issue. What's the most pressing for the moment? So that's the consultation opportunity. And then after that, I schedule the hypnotherapy with the client, and that is typically a 2-hour session. Again, it can be in person, it can be over Zoom, whichever a person is able to do. And if you're interested in doing that, I can be reached over my email, which is hypnowithtracy@yahoo.com, hypnowithtracy@yahoo.com. And then also I have my website, and that is Tracy Clairmont Hypnotherapy.com, where I can also be reached.
Yay, congrats on the website.
Thank you, I'm so excited.
Thank you so much. Awesome. Good to talk to you today. Pleasure to have you back. And
Pleasure to be here.
wow, looking forward to the next time we speak. Do we have anything on the sheet? Are we coming up soon, or I felt like I lost you for a little while. I don't know if you were done with your shows. I'm like, or maybe she's away, or
I have two more shows to do with
awesome.
you, and I believe they're scheduled next Monday at noon and the following Monday at noon. So I will be seeing you then. Yes.
All right, good. Thank you
so
so much,
excited.
Tracy. Looking forward to it. Thanks again. Have a great day. And to all of our listeners, the same. We'll be right back with more.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.